Hello, everybody. Welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is a Wednesday night tradition. It is Ask Away. And for the past 2 weeks, we have made this a tag team affair. We had Connor on from One Leeds fan channel. And you will be very flattered to know, Ben, that when we put the shout out, who do you want on the show? BenHD was a popular name. Ladies and gentlemen, Championship legend and Preston expert, BenHD.
I'm honoured. Thanks for having me on.
Tremendous stuff. So, look, we're going to go back and forth. We've got some Patreon questions. We can see the comments filling up. Nothing is off limits. We'll just roll with it, Ben. Yeah?
Sounds good.
Let's do it. Let's do a Patreon one first, guys. Fill those comments up there with questions down the side there. Not just Preston, any club. We'll talk about anything, frankly. So let's get the Patreon ones. Just to plug for my Patreon first. Go and sign up on there. Ben, Tony says, EFL club finances are bleak as the effects of the pandemic continue. Should the EFL consider a temporary suspension of the automatic points deduction for liquidation, given that maybe half their members could go that way? There's a lot in that. The liquidation thing makes a big jump. Firstly, we've heard a bit from the culture secretary today about helping lower division clubs, but both you and I know, Ben, that there's probably a few championship clubs that given how the spending goes. What are your feelings on the assistance? And then do some of the FFP and the liquidation things need to be slightly altered?
Yeah, it is an interesting one with championship clubs, because I think a lot of the times when this sort of conversation gets brought up, I think everyone's eyes and attention does automatically go towards League One and League Two, and understandably so. You know, there's going to be a lot of trouble there. But like you said, I think there's going to be, over the next few months, a lot more stories are going to come out about championship clubs who are tiptoeing a very fine line. You know, every season we like to see, you know, championship clubs, at least 2 or 3, taking a gamble on big signings and things like that. But with the finances like they are in the way at the moment, I think we're going to see less of that. And maybe as some sort of backup option, something like that could come in. But there's a lot coming into this sort of thing. What's your sort of view on it?
It's weird because you're, as a Preston fan, you're probably similar to me, because Trevor Hemmings and Marcus Evans are cash rich and not sitting here wanting to be, snotty about it, but they should be all right, shouldn't they? Because the idea is they won't let it go under. They'll, I don't know. I just can't see a situation where if they do now go, say, until March, I mean, that's the worst case scenario, isn't it? March with no one in the grounds.
Yeah.
I can't see a situation where, either there's still no one in the grounds by March. I think they'll start to go back to the pilot thing. And if we can't do the pilot thing, then we're in trouble because there's been another spike anyway.
Yeah.
And if they can't do that, surely either the government or the Premier League, I don't know which is more likely. I suspect the Premier League have got more money than the government, but that would be my take. How do you feel as a Preston fan? Because I suppose it's a bit different, Preston being in the Championship. There's plenty richer clubs than Preston in the Championship in terms of clubs. But in terms of like Ipswich, you look at League One and you think, God, we don't have it anywhere near as bad as some of the other clubs. What's your take?
Yeah, I saw something. I saw a report come out a couple of weeks ago about match day revenue losses for championship clubs and what that would be on a day-to-day basis. I think that with Preston North End, a match day would be about 400 grand or something like that. So if you're putting that over a full season, realistically, what's probably going to end up happening is we sell one of our big assets in either this transfer window or in January, and that covers the revenue lost throughout the season. Really, you know, Trevor. In the situation we find ourselves in with Trevor Hemmings, I don't think we're ever going to be in a situation where we're going to be fearing for something like that. And I suppose that's like the benefit of being at a stable club at this point in time in the world, really.
Let's do one from the chat. There was one I wanted to take there. I'll go randomly. We'll do another Patreon in a second. Just a quick one there. Yes, Ben, says Sam. I don't know whether that's me or you. Could be either of us today, isn't it? Here's Charlie saying hello. Lots of people saying hello. Great stuff. Where was the one about Struber? I wanted to ask you about him. Oh, God, where is it? Oh, for goodness. There we go. Sorry. Hip, what do you think, Ben, of Struber to New York Red Bulls talks? And can I add to that, how many places did Barnsley drop from our 1 to 24s if Gerhard Struber goes? Because we all like him, don't we?
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of Struber and the way he was able to sort of galvanise that Barnsley squad from last season. I think that one of the performances that always stood out to me towards the tail end of that season was when Barnsley went away to Leeds, right towards the tail end of the season. They were absolutely all over them. I think they had something like 20 shots in that game, but just nothing could get over the line. But yeah, the philosophy there at Barnsley is clear to see. I touched on this in the video the other day with the New York Red Bull talks, because a manager like Struber, I think, probably did come to Barnsley as sort of that platform to get him out there. I think that was always the plan, that he'd end up going somewhere else. But I don't really know. I'm not like much of an advocate. I'm not much of a watcher of like MLS football, so I don't know, like, career-wise, is that going to be the right thing? Because I always thought that he'd end up getting maybe like a top championship job. I know that Watford at one point were very interested in bringing him in, weren't they? And if he was to go down that path, he could then find himself in the Premier League. But yeah, the move from Championship to MLS is a bit of a funny one for me. I'm not really sure what to make of it, really. What do you think?
Well, he was already in the. I think it's more the Red Bull group rather than MLS, which is the attraction, isn't it? So that gives you. But wasn't he already? Was he already at what? No, he was at Wolfsberger in the Austrian Bundesliga, wasn't he? So as soon as he goes into that opens up. He can go to Red Bull Salzburg or Red Bull Leipzig, and then Champions League, and so it might be that route rather than the actual MLS thing. Who knows? It'd be a shame to lose him to the Championship. I just jokingly, a mate texted me about this the other day, and I said, well, -5 positions off wherever you had Barnsley finishing. Are you with that -5 or any less?
Yeah, it's not been the greatest of starts this season that Barnsley got off to, is it? But I think that with Struber, it probably would be a drop-off like that. Even more so dramatic, possibly, considering how they started before last season, before they had Struber in. So it's an interesting one. There is quality in that Barnsley squad, but Struber definitely elevates them. Yeah.
It's and it's one of those ones where you look at it and you think that's his squad as well. Who it's tailored for him, isn't it? So can we do another Patreon question, Ben? Because I have to fulfill my obligations here. This is Matthew. There you go. Do you think this could be the year that Preston make the jump into the playoffs? They're a team that in recent seasons I've had difficulty determining whether they've been overachieving or underachieving or just about where they should be. I tend to think of Bristol City similarly. Both have finished just outside the playoffs. What I would add to that, Ben, if it's okay, is I get the feeling with Preston that they haven't gone as all in on the recruitment as Brentford and Bristol City say do. I always bracket Brentford, Bristol City and Preston as the better recruiters in the division. But Bristol City and Preston have gone all in, and it feels like, Hugill goes and then a long gap, and Robinson goes and then a long gap. And it feels like there might be a time where, I mean, you tell me, Pearson or Davies, or there's a lot of good players in the squad actually now that can be sold. What are you saying?
It's a difficult one this season with Preston because there's a lot of factors coming in. In some aspects, last season, I do see as a little bit of a missed opportunity. I think the league at that point was very open. I think we spent something like 60% of the season in the top 6 or something like that. And then after lockdown, our form just fell off a cliff. But coming into this season, we have, I'd say, probably our 4 best players all in their last year of their contracts now. So these next few weeks of the transfer window are going to be quite interesting to see what unfolds there, really. So Daniel Johnson, Ben Pearson, Alan Brown, and there's one more, Ben Davis as well, all entering into the last months of their contract. So a club like Preston, it sort of felt like last season was now or never with this current group of players. And it does feel as if there is this rebuild that's on the horizon for us because, if we manage to keep this group together for, let's say, the next 3 years, added a little bit more quality into that number 9 position, which I feel like we have been lacking since we sold Jordan Hugill, I really don't think we'd be that far away. But I think that, I think it's highlighted loads. Our record against like the top 6 last season, it was in those sorts of games where it was always very fine margins, but we always just seem to come up a little bit short. And I think that recruitment has been something that fans have been, rightly so, a little bit more critical of the club in the past few transfer windows. We've been a little bit more slow to get off the mark with things. I think we're the only Championship club at the moment who's actually not signed anybody in this transfer window. We've been crying out for a number 9, but yeah, I don't mean to sound all negative and stuff because we're not too far away from the top 6. I don't feel like as it stands, but there is the feeling that there is this rebuild that's on the horizon, and it's really a question of what happens with these key 4 players. Do they extend the contracts, or do we ship them out and they go somewhere else?
I've got a comment and a question back to you. I totally agree about last season. Once we got after lockdown and looking at I know it's easy to look at the table now. It was obvious that Leeds were really good and that West Brom had a really good manager and some parachute money. Brentford and Fulham were almost good. Yeah. And then it was just anybody else's for 5th and 6th. And Cardiff kind of got in there, and Forest should have been in there, and Swansea on the last day. And you're right, for the most part, Preston were in there. Is it bad planning to have those 4 players all in the same place? Or is it just bad luck that they've become, they've probably arrived at different times, signed at different times, and all of that? Is that bad luck? Because if I was a Preston fan, I'd be like, oh, I don't want to start next season with either none of those players. Yeah. And if they're not there, I want a boatload of cash to have come in for them not to be there. What's your take?
Yeah, it's I get the point that it could be bad luck, but I think that on the club, if you look at our past 3 seasons, these guys have all been key players. Ben Pearson and Ben Davies especially. I'd throw Alan Brown into that category, and well, then DJ's performances have just shot up out of nowhere. It wasn't just those 4 as well. There were a lot of other squad players. It just seemed to be like this was the year that we generally renew to, and we have been a bit more consistent with renewing those contracts for squad players. But yeah, the quality in our squad without those 4 players goes from like playoff pushes to a mid-table team just meandering, not doing much really. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting few weeks to see what happens in the transfer market with regards to those players.
Up the BenHD. Tremendous. Ben, just give a quick plug for your, I'm sure I just don't imagine anybody who's watching this will not know who you are, being it's Championship, but just do us a quick plug. And if anyone's not subscribing, well, first of all, go and do it. Well, no, actually, don't do it right now. Don't leave the stream, but make a note. Put a post-it note down on the table. Plug your channel, Ben. I'll shut up.
Yeah, so BenHD on YouTube, that's it really, all about Championship content. So similar to what you do here, really, we preview the games, we review them after, and then all the stuff midweek, looking into everything Championship, really. So always a good bit of fun, really.
Go and subscribe. Tom asks, have you got loads of excited Bristol City fans at the moment?
Yeah.
they're all they're everywhere, aren't they? Tom asks, rightly so, there you go. What do you think of Bristol City so far? He's kind of then prejudiced the question by saying, also considering De Silva, Williams, Walsh, Morrell, O'Dowda, Baker and Callis injured. I think he's saying that they're doing really well with lots of players out. Honestly, I did not see this, but what do you think, Bristol City?
Yeah, Bristol coming into this season, I think the big question mark over them was the manager, really. I think in my predictions, I had them fairly mid-table. I think I had them 12th or something like that. But the recruitment, I think, has been excellent. I think that Chris Martin was a bit of underrated business. Brilliant at Derby. I think he's already fitting quite well there. I think he's got 2 assists so far. Having him playing off Naki Wells, I think, is a really good partnership. And yeah, the summer recruitment there at Bristol City, I think, has been excellent. It's what you touched on previously, really. Bristol City seem to have gone really up a level in terms of their recruitment, whereas Preston have stagnated a little bit, Obviously, they've done ridiculously well with player sales. I'd probably put Bristol City as like a close second to Brentford in terms of getting that gigantic fee when they do go ahead and sell people on. But yeah, the manager seems to have got along on there well so far. It is still, a small sample size that we are looking into. I think, 3 games into this season, but there's positives to take. I wouldn't want to play them at the moment.
Absolutely. We'll go to another Patreon question in a minute. This one just popped up. We were just talking off before we started the broadcast about possibly some good news now and takeover there. But Ben, hypothetically, where would Wigan's team of 1920, let's not say 1920, Katie, let's say where would Wigan's team of 2020, the first, when they were just so ridiculously good? So we're talking Marshall, Robinson, Kipray, Dunkley, Byrne, Morsey, Williams, Dowell. I'm doing well here. Jacobs, Moore, and Lowe.
Yeah,
I'm in the top 10 with that. I think.
I was gonna say, I thought I might be being a bit ridiculous putting them top 10, but that's probably not like an outlandish thing to say with how well they were doing, was it? Yeah, it really was. It's such a shame what happened to that squad that it all got disassembled, but. Yeah, top 10 wouldn't be unrealistic for that.
I think we may have lost Ben on the connection there, but he was just saying top 10 possibly for that Wigan squad. And the thing I think I would add to that, he's back, good. I think the thing I'd add to that is...
We're back.
Yeah, good. Championship teams as well, Ben, when they go into... Once they've had like... even 6 months and they go into a new season with the same management, I think they would have improved even more. But hopefully some good news coming out of Wigan. Did you notice, Ben, Ipswich played Wigan on the first day of the season before they could sort anything out? So that was advantageous timing, let's just say. Let's do a Patreon question. This is JR at the bottom. I'm going to have to remove that banner. If we staged a huge championship quiz, which one of you would win? Just joking, of course. Here goes. I would have age on my side there, though, Ben, wouldn't I? Yeah. But then your brain probably works faster than mine for that reason. Which of the seasons you've covered was the most exciting and why? Okay. People often mention the 2002-03 West Ham side as the best team that was relegated from the Premier League. Which was the championship team was the best to end up in League One? I'm going to plead the fifth on that. I need to have a think about that one, Ben. Favourite season that you've covered? You've been going sort of 4 or 5 years now, so you've got more of a sample size than me.
Yeah, best season. There's a lot of things to unpack here. I love covering the season when Wolves were in the Championship and they were just doing absolutely mental with things, like doing transfer roundup videos when they were being linked to the Jota and Reeve and Neves. I was like, what's going on here?
And then they actually signed them. And you're like doing the videos going,
sorts of players.
Yeah, this is never going to happen. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
I'd probably say that was definitely up there in terms of one of the most exciting years that Wolves there. There was the whole thing going between Nuno and Warnock as well. That whole battle at the top of the Championship, I absolutely loved that. So yeah, that was a big year for me. Yeah, I loved it all that year.
I haven't been doing it as long, so I'd have to go for the 18-19, which unfortunately has Norwich winning the league. But to have Bielsa there, and then to have 2 managers actually beat him, and then to have Villa and Grealish and Abraham and all of the money there. And you spoke about last season. It was weaker last season, wasn't it? Where that year where Leeds were really good and didn't go up. Villa with Grealish were really good for the last sort of 2 or 3 months. Sheffield United were brilliant and Norwich were brilliant. And then you had Lampard's Derby as well and Spygate and Grealish getting punched and Bielsa letting a Doma score. That was great. The only issue with that is Ipswich finished bottom and were one of the worst Championship teams in history.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Oh, is what it is. It's my way of coping with it, Ben. I don't know in terms of the sides to go down. Everyone mentions when Peterborough scored 54 points and went down, but that doesn't actually make them the best team. Because sometimes when you get a really high tide at the bottom, like last season, that was because of a lack of teams sort of killing it up at the top. I'm not sure. The West Ham example is obvious in the Premier League, isn't it? When they had Defoe and Carrick and James and Canute, all sorts of good players, and got relegated. I'm struggling to think of the Championship equivalent.
Yeah, teams really. Yeah, I'm struggling on this one. Really, I'd have to do a bit of digging into this one. I think the squad that Hull started last season with. Yeah, I think the squad that Hull started the season with compared to what they got relegated with, you could throw that in, but it's just got dismantled in January, that one, didn't it?
Tom, thank you. £5 super chat. What are your thoughts on Leeds United? Has this gone through today? Signing Michael Cuisson from Bayern Munich. Has it actually gone through? This guy's should we just can you freestyle, Ben, and I'll bring him up on SofaScore?
Yeah, go ahead. Leeds have been an interesting one this season in the Premier League, haven't they? I know that you're still covering them. Out of each of the three promoted sides, they've gone a bit mental this season, haven't they, in terms of goals being scored? I think I need to get some of them in my fantasy team. I don't know what you're like with fantasy football, Ben, but I've been a bit all over the place so far.
I might have made a big mistake today on fantasy football because I did my video. So let me just go to the split screen on that. Now, I thought if you played your chip to do unlimited transfers, that you then kept the players. So I did the transfers, made the video, and then I've got a whole load of comments going, Ben, you do realise Jack O'Connell comes straight back into your team next week. And I'm like, nah, he doesn't, does he? So I've made an absolute boo-boo today. So today I took out Van Dijk and swapped him for Robertson because I thought if I'm having a Liverpool defender, I want one of the fullbacks, really. Yeah. So then I've got Reece James. I've put James Justin in now because he's cheap. Then I've got Grealish, Salah. I'm Salah, Mane, Aubameyang. It's too difficult because I want to keep De Bruyne. I think he'll still be awesome. And then I'm just going to have a cheap midfielder. And then I'm trying to get Kane, Raul Jimenez, and who's my other striker? Calvert-Lewin now. So it's not looking bad, but I think I should have done the wild card. Is that I didn't understand the rules really properly, but there you go. There's Michael Cuisance, Ben. So Bayern Munich player, 21 years old. Let's see if we can bring up any Bundesliga from last year for you. 9 appearances, only 3 starts. Looks, I don't know the player too much. Looks like a Bayern Munich youngster. So let's look at the previous games there if I bring it up. So he has been playing in the Bundesliga. If I bring up this game against Schalke, which looks like a nice close game that ended 8-0. Has he come off the bench maybe? Let's have a look. Came in for Leroy Sané, so I'm guessing he's a more attacking midfielder than a sitting midfielder. So what I will say, without necessarily knowing the player, is that compared to Norwich, it's chalk and cheese with the recruitment. They're actually going for it. And compared to, sorry, Ben, I've got rid of you. Compared to Sheffield United, where they went for players that, if they got relegated, would still do well in the Championship. So, that would be a quick blag on Michael Cuisson, in my lovely cod French accent there. Right, let's have a little look here. Any Soccer Saturday thoughts? Now, this is an interesting one, Ben, where we might be able to get you involved, where they want me to go live at 3 p.m. on a Saturday and get all the games going. So maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about that off air. But there is definitely a want for people like you and me to be live on a Saturday at 3. This is Carl with a Wales badge there. Your thoughts on Joe Rodden, centre-back linked to West Ham? Now, I'm sure Ben would agree with me that for us Championship hipsters, Guehi, Cabango and Rodden is a bit of a dream as 3 centre-backs, isn't it? Rodden to West Ham?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Joe, I rate him very highly. I think he struggled a little bit last season with injuries, didn't he? He was a little bit in and out of the squad, but I think the money that Swansea will be demanding for him has got to be really up there. I think he's top quality. I think it was his first game back from injury last season when Preston played Swansea at Deepdale, and he absolutely, like, leadership qualities for that age, good on the ball, really composed one. I think, yeah, quality player. The Premier League's calling, but I do hope Swansea keep him together just to keep that back three together.
Ben, you're really going to change your Bristol City. Ben really knows me as an optimist. Nice one, Annie. There you go. 2 great Championship minds. There we go. We don't have enough diversity of name, though, do we?
No.
Too many Bens there. Right, let's find you a good question to do. Thoughts on, and you can parlay into Reading, Veljko Paunovic. So Reading have won 3 games so far. Lucas João looks like he's going for it and now appears to have hurt his shoulder. John Swift is injured as well. So there's lots of mitigating factors. And I was at their game against Barnsley where I'm telling you, I watched a lot of football matches. They would have lost without the red cards. I promise. That game was swinging in. So Reading, and I don't want to upset Ashley or any Reading fans, Reading are confusing to me at the moment because lots of things tell me that they shouldn't be winning all their games, yet they are continuing to win all of their games. What's your view?
Yeah, Reading last season were the bane of my existence on my YouTube channel. I just could not predict them. I think Reading are going to get 3 points this week. They'd lose. I'd go the opposite way. Could not call them. So it'll be an interesting one to see how this season pans out because it has been a very good start. I think there is a lot of star power in that squad, especially going forward. You know, Lucas João, I mean, it's just really into it, but if he does stay fit, I think you've got a 15 to maybe even 20 goal a season striker there. If he's getting deliveries in from the likes of John Swift and Ajaria, Raphael, I think is a very good goalkeeper as well. There's a lot to like about that Reading squad individually, but getting a tune out of them consistently always seems to have been the problem. It was certainly their problem with consistency last season.
And I was sat there, Ben, thinking, if I'm playing Football Manager as well, you talk about the star power. If you put Puskás up front, play João left, Maite right, Ajaria 10, and Swift and Elise as the double pivot, it's really good. I mean, I'm sure that team would probably get hammered because there'd be no balance and they'd all be 2 attacking, but some really decent players in there. Right, I think we have one more Patreon question to do. And I need to remove the banner at the bottom. Oh, for goodness sakes. Wrong one. There we go. Does Ben and Ben, I think the Premier League should help the lower league clubs financially to save them going out of business, or is this unfair to other clubs? Does the Premier League have I know it doesn't have a kind of business duty to do it. Does it have a moral duty to do it?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one, this question. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on it. I think there definitely should be more of a trickle down in terms of the revenue, you know, how disproportionately that's balanced out between, you know, the drop off from the Premier League to the Championship and then Championship to League One is absolutely astronomical. In terms of if they have a moral obligation to do something like that, I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. What do you think?
I think we could put another cliff edge in there. So you have Premier League, massive cliff edge down to and I moan about parachute payments all the time, but then massive cliff edge between parachute. So the Premier League would already argue that they feed I mean, what's the year one parachute payments? 40 minutes, 120 million they feed into the championship, which tends to get swamped up by those 3 relegated teams gambling on wages and then promotion bonuses. And fans argue with me, black as white. That doesn't count because they were all promotion bonuses. I'm like, you still spent the money and it didn't go back into the pyramid lower down, didn't it? So if they don't do it, Ben, and some smaller sides in League Two get bust, I think people will point fingers at the Premier League before they point at the government, won't they? And they'll say, oh, I don't know, Aguero makes 10 million a year and whoever's just gone, Macclesfield would have. And I know there's another side to the argument that Macclesfield did some really dumb things for a very long time. And, you have to run your business. It's very, very tricky, isn't it? 2 of my favourite Championship content creators. Is there anybody else? I'm being arrogant now. Oh dear. Did you watch? I did a watch along of this, Ben. Huddersfield. Was that not the most awkward, particularly the extreme close-ups of Sabri Lamouchi's face at the end of the game? That was very uncomfortable. I did not think you and I would be sat here having a discussion about Lamouchi, literally now the hot favourite to be the first one fired. But when I see him and star player Lewis Grabban with the most frosty, not even looking at each other, alpha male standoff on the touchline, where did it all go wrong? And it just looks now like we know what Marianakis is like. It just looks now like when, not whether we think he'll get sacked. But what went wrong?
It's a really tough one at Forest because there's been such a high turnover of players there, hasn't there? I mean, just looking at this transfer window, especially with all the new names they brought in there, I think clubs haven't necessarily all been helped by the short pre-season. I think that the sort of mood around Forest has bled into this season with how they fell away in the last 7 games and things like that. I don't know about you, but I had Forest in my top 6 prediction this year. I thought they'd be able to snap out of it. Yeah, I think I had them 5th as well. I thought they'd be able to snap out of it this season. The quality is no doubt in that squad. I like Lamouchi, but Forest have a lot of creative players there who I'm not sure would potentially thrive under him. I mean, João Carvalho, we've just seen him leaving, haven't we? He's one who's not worked out there, who I thought there really could have been a future in England for him. So it's an interesting one. I look at someone like Luke Freeman. They shouldn't be struggling for creativity with a player as good as that in their squad. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one to put your finger on.
I was exactly the same as you, Ben. And I thought after 3 or 4 players have been signed rather than 13 or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
So now Grabban didn't have any help last year and you've got Lyle Taylor. Oh, you weren't that creative and relied on Lolly too much. Now you've got Luke Freeman. But then all of a sudden it's not Cash, Figueiredo, Worrell and Ribeiro. Completely new back 4. And then they've just signed a Greek player as well. They could genuinely play a back 4 in the next game that's only been in the club for like 2.5 weeks or something. It's absolutely insane. This came up on my last feed. We had a little bit of a laugh and a joke about this one because it was ridiculous. So the laws say that serious foul play is when you endanger or are careless against a risk of injury to your opponent. So Tom Barkhuizen slips over. So there's definitely no recklessness. He's just unlucky. He just falls over. By the letter of the law, the ref can get away with it on the basis of, did he endanger his safety? Well, yeah, but he slipped over. Do you know what I mean? I'd imagine as a Preston fan, you were pretty irked at this red card. Have you ever seen anything like that? Where do you think the referee knew he slipped and still went with the he's endangering his safety line, or do you think he just didn't quite see it right and thought he dived in?
I think he's got to have not seen it right and think he's just dived in, because the guy slipped. I mean, me as a Preston fan, I'm sure you'll know my thoughts on it. But what was probably most annoying about this one was that it was probably similar to the Reading game that you mentioned before against Barnsley, up until that point where we had the red cards. And I know it was very early on in that match, but we were all over them. We were getting in behind and things like that. And I think that with 11 men on that pitch, we don't lose that game there. So especially like a player like Barkhuizen, and who's as integral to our system as he is. So the red card, it wasn't overturned, but the ban was reduced from a 3-game to a 1-game. So I think Preston fans haven't been too happy about that not being overturned completely. I think, what's suggested is a little bit of protecting the referee and stuff like that, not wanting to go against that decision. But it's an annoying one against Brentford, not having Barkhuizen.
No, they don't want to eat their own, do they, with the refs? So I guess by knocking it down from 3 games to 1, that takes it away from. It wouldn't be violent conduct, it'd be serious foul play when 6 foot athletic footballer slips over. Shocking. There you go. We'll give him a pass then if he thought he dived in, but there you go. Carl says VAR in the Championship, considering playoff final is richest game in the world. Thoughts? Well, and I'll give you a different type of question. When we were doing all about the finances, there's a sense that the playoffs are a different competition than when I was researching the Sheffield Wednesday points deduction, and everyone was arguing back and forth about when it should be levied. The EFL rulebook says the season ends when you play your last game. Therefore, Sheffield Wednesday's season ended at game 46. If you then go on into the playoffs, your season is still continuous. So are they missing a little trick here where they could bring it in the playoffs as a I don't know, or if that's a separate kind of competition? What do you think?
I think there's valid reason in the argument for potentially bringing it in the playoffs, but not for the whole competition of the Championship. I don't know what your general thoughts are on VAR and things like that, but I'm not personally the biggest fan of it. I think that when you are in a football ground, it does take away from the experience and things like that. But with as much on the line, like the comment says, the richest game in the world right there, the playoff final, I can see an argument in the playoffs, because it does feel very separated from the whole rest of the season, the playoffs, doesn't it? And you always get a bit of controversy going on in it. So I can see that argument to be made, definitely.
Just a little pushback to Emmett here. We're trying our best here. What we try and he says, I'm too slow reading the comments. If you can imagine, I can see me, I can see Ben. I've got the split screen down there. I've got all the comments coming up down the side. I've got the Patreon things there. And people want to hear from Ben while he's on the channel as well. So we're trying to get through, and we won't do all of your comments, but I'll shut up now and we'll do a few more of them. But we're trying our best here, Ben, aren't we? Just while we're doing that VAR thing, thoughts on the handball rule, which there's been some movement on that today already, where they're talking about relaxing it. It strikes me they're trying to, because of VAR now, VAR only works with black and white decisions, don't it? People can't accept that the decision's still subjective with VAR. That does not compute for football fans. They expect to see VAR and for it to go, no, this is exactly what's happening. And then you're still not sure. Well, that's because it's subjective. It strikes me they tried to make handball black and white. So basically, if it hit your arm in the box, it's a penalty. That doesn't work though, surely, does it? Especially when you've got Eric Dyer. Like Andy Carroll's an absolute monster, isn't he? He's trying to jump with him, and I know Roy Keane on Sky Sports is like, oh, he shouldn't have turned his back. Well, whatever. Roy Keane's a parody nowadays, isn't he? So he's a parody account of himself. But I've always had trouble with the deliberate, not deliberate thing. But funnily enough, as soon as you take it away, it makes more sense to me now. Do you think handball needs to stay subjective?
Yeah, handball, I think, has always been a bit of a grey area, hasn't it? Because I think that when we were at one side of it, when we were like, we don't know what's deliberate, what's not, we went to the extreme with it and said anything's handball. And now we're at that extreme. We think, oh, hold on a minute, I quite like how it was before. We'll end up getting into a ridiculous situation where footballers are aiming for each other's hands in the penalty box to go ahead and try and gain an advantage that way. So, yeah. I think I would be a fan of going back to how it was previously, really.
Yeah, or they've got to get some kind of differentiation between, I don't even know how you write it, but it wouldn't be hard to say if the player is deemed to not have been aware of the ball coming, or I don't know, because I mean that even sounds stupid when I say it, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When your back's turned, and they've tried to do it with the natural silhouette has been the terminology, but then that's totally subjective as well. What's a natural silhouette? And you draw as many pictures as you like,
exactly.
But we get back to the thing that A makes football great, but B makes football fans not understand that it's a handball if the ref deems it to be a handball. And that's what makes it great, because there's the grey area, but that's what makes everyone go mad. And I get these big streams of comments, Ben, and I'm like, guys, no one will win this debate. It's subjective. You won't win. You can debate all day long, but you will not win. Right, let's throw some fuel on the fire here. Here's Josh. I think I spoke to Josh earlier today, actually. So Watford have signed another player from Udinese. Well, who would have thought that, Ben? So Udinese are owned by the Pozzos, so are Watford. Now, we will be very clear in what we say here. In the same way, there is nothing wrong with selling your stadium to yourself. It does not break any laws. Whether you have an issue with that morally or not is up to you. It's not against the rules. When we talk about Watford and Udinese, it is not against the rules for organisation to own a club in England, a club in Italy. The club in Italy might be slightly higher up than the English one, so they can give their worst players to the English one, which will improve them. And the English one can then give their best players. Where I worry a bit, Ben, is FFP, because if I don't, the Roberto Pereira deal has gone through undisclosed as ever, and Derby were charged for selling a stadium above market value. Can we charge, say for example, and I'm not saying they have, but if Udinese paid Watford £25 million for Pereira, we would say that was above market value. Is that a nice little way around FFP that where Watford can bring in a load of money there? And should there be any kind of sanction if you own another club and you're taking, like Mr. Marianakis and Olympiacos and Forest, without fail, every season a player goes from Forest to Olympiacos, and we never know what the fee is? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you take my point. Go on.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. It's a very creative way of getting around those sort of loopholes, something like that, isn't it? Because at this point in time, you can't point the finger and say you're doing anything wrong. Well, it's all very much within the rules and things like that. What I will say about that Watford squad at the moment is some of the options in that squad, and if they do retain some of the players that they've still got on the books there, wow, we are seriously in for a treat watching them at times this season. Like we saw Saar feature for them last time. I thought he'd be the first out the door. It's going to be an interesting time for Watford, but yeah, it is very important for the financial future of that club there, and FFP and things like that they do. They are knocking around the top of the Championship for sure.
It's got to the point with the Watford squad as well, where I think, oh, right, so they've now sold Decore and they've now sold Estupinian. And then you come back and you look, and I did a bit today on a transfer video, and there's still another 5 players there who are probably all making north of £50,000 a week and, could be very, very good in this division. Someone shopping in a different market there, as Tom Plays Games says, is Sheffield Wednesday, who have signed Callum Patterson. Now, I don't want to rain on their parade here, but I always thought Callum Patterson just ended up front because he could win headers from throw-ins for Warnock in 2018, and I assume they've signed him as a striker. So when they've added him into Jordan Rhodes and Kachunga, what do you think? What do you think about that? And just give me a bit on fighting minus 12 points.
Yeah, Callum Patterson's an interesting one because he's a bit. I think he originally arrived as a right back, didn't he? He was then played as a striker under Warnock, and then he reverted back to a midfielder. But I think in that promotion season, he got into double figures for them playing as that striker, so clearly effective. And I think that if the plan is to play him up front, Wednesday like to go with that too. If they get Josh Windass running off him, that could be something that works. Wednesday, at the start of the season, I think Wednesday have looked a little bit stronger this season than they did towards the tail end of last season. I think that the motivation wasn't quite there. After Christmas, they completely fell off a cliff. I think like the majority of people, really, I think most people had them in the bottom three because of that minus 12. But the first three matches has been a bit of a mixed bag, but there does seem to be that determination of, we're going to turn that around. The thing where I do worry a little bit is every championship club runs into a point where the season where they'll lose 5 or 6 games, something like that. My concern is if Wednesday do run into that, while that minus is still on the board, do things start to turn toxic a little bit in that period of time? Because right now, I think they're striking the balance with it, but it's a very fine balance, especially at a club like Sheffield Wednesday, when things can always be a little bit chaotic, can't they?
I have nothing to add. You nailed that. Absolutely. I feel exactly the same way. Adi asks about one of the Fab Four at Preston, their Villa reject. How long has he been at Preston, actually? Can Preston keep him away from Rangers? So, assuming Daniel Johnson hasn't signed a contract by January, how much is he then worth? Because you're only 5 months away from July, so 6-7 months away from the contract ending. What's he worth? What level can he play at? Because you'd think top end Championship, Scotland for sure. Maybe not Premier League yet. I don't know. I don't know what you think.
For DJ, I wouldn't put him into Premier League category. I'd definitely throw him into top-end Championship. In terms of value, it's a really tough one with 12 months left on the contract and things like that. I think in a normal market, for how many goal contributions he got last season, I think goals and assists added up, he got 19, the most in our squad last season. You'd be looking at around that 6 million mark. But with the 12 months, it just gets like almost slashed in half probably, doesn't it? It's a tough one. All the players who are out of contract at North End, we'd probably be okay with DJ going. Don't get me wrong, the quality in the squad drops down without him there, but we have the options to replace him. We have Josh Harrop up and coming. We have Brad Potts who can play in that role, and Alan Brown, who's been, outcast to right back with DJ doing so on that number 10 role, can reclaim that spot for himself. So I'd be absolutely gutted to see DJ go, but out of the ones who are out of contract, I think there is scope that he could be replaced in our squad.
What about Bayliss? Is there any chance that he will actually break through? Because we're talking about the recruitment slowing down. That was actually what the money was spent on last season, wasn't it?
Yeah, Bayliss has got a little bit more action this season. Last season, he was nowhere to be seen, really. It was a couple of cup games here and there. I think the general long-term goal with Tom Bayliss is that he's going to be Paul Gallagher's successor as sort of that deep-line playmaker. So I think that if this master plan comes off and we've already got all the replacements in our squad, our midfield three going forward into the future will probably be Bayliss and Ledson playing together with Josh Harrop in front of them. So we'll see how that develops. It's still very early days to really judge Bayliss because we've just not said enough of him yet.
Make a really interesting point there. I was talking to a Norwich fan about them being at the end of the first cycle of a team under Stuart Webber. And it's almost like Preston are trying to mitigate the cycle actually ending by having the other player there. Do you know what I mean? Because if Norwich all of a sudden within, say, 12 months lose Aarons, Godfrey, Buendia and Campbell, then it's a big hit, isn't it? But it's keeping the wheels turning, isn't it? felt equally uncomfortable, Ben, watching Sabri Lamucci's face as I did watching Wickham trying to defend against Swansea, who genuinely could have been 5-0 up in about 30 minutes in that game. I know how it can look sometimes. It looks at the moment like Wickham just aren't going to score any points. And they've lost 5-0 at Blackburn already, although Adam Armstrong's... I think someone asked a question about Adam Armstrong, actually. Wickham are going to score some points. How much of a challenge are they going to make down in that bottom six?
It's a tough one. I think coming into this season, I think the vast majority of people probably wrote them off because they were like the smallest club coming up into the league, and looking at the infrastructure of the clubs there and things like that. The start to the season, though, hasn't been great. There's no papering over those cracks. I think, we've seen what Gareth Ainsworth's come out and said after the game, it's a learning process and things like that. But that's all very good, but a learning process can't go on for all too long in the Championship with how competitive it's going to be at the bottom, especially if we're looking at the sort of point tallies to survive that we were last season. Like, the level at the bottom got ridiculously high towards the end of the season last time round. And with you on that Swansea game, though, Swansea had maybe another striker in there, or put the foot on the gas a little bit more for that second half. It could have been absolutely chaos like it was in that Blackburn game. I do worry for them a little bit. I just don't know if the quality is there. You look at, probably one of the main outlets going forward, Daryl Hogan, obviously former North End player. At Preston, he was a squad player who would get maybe 5 minutes off the bench and things like that. So for them to pin their attacking hopes on someone like that, it's going to be a tough one. But who knows? We've seen crazier things happen in the Championship, haven't they?
Let me pick out another question. We spoke about that because it flashed up on my phone just as we were starting. Everton have bid £26 million for Ben Godfrey, who is at Norwich, is a centre-half who spent a season on loan playing in midfield at Shrewsbury, and then just out of nowhere ended up with Christoph Zimmermann as the first-choice centre-half in a really good Norwich team that literally did no defending. And then... No, they didn't. And they were brilliant because they just attacked the whole game. So Ben Godfrey didn't get much practice at, the other team has the ball for 15 minutes. That would be the most Norwich thing in the world if they got 26 million for him, because they always get really good money. And you'd think if, you want to keep Aarons and Buendia, it looks like Buendia is done, but get 13 million for Jamal Lewis and 26 million for Ben Godfrey. Is Ben Godfrey worth 26 million, Ben?
It's a tough one. I think if I'm sort of ranking what these Norwich stars are worth at the moment, I'd certainly have Aarons above Godfrey. It's an interesting one, though, with centre-halves in this market, isn't they? I think they are the
especially
very
English ones.
Exactly. It is very much the in-demand position at the moment, That's why I think that North End would be asking for so much for Ben Davies, even with 1 year left of his contract.
Is he left-footed?
Yeah.
Oh, God, add 10 million on then.
Exactly. English, left-footed, fairly young.
Adam Webster, both feet, 25 million, go.
You can get a killing for it. So, yes, centre-backs, I think it's just a very inflated market at the moment. So maybe he is worth that to Everton if they are going to go on and develop him. But we'll see. We'll see on that one.
Sorry, Alistair, I didn't mean to click on that one. Who do you think will be, this is Harry. Maybe there's a clue as his surname there for... Who do you think will be top scorer? Because we've had Lucas Yao start very, very well, but possibly get hurt now. Yeah. James Collins at Luton has started very well. You've already mentioned Ismail Sarr. Timu Pukki has bossed this league before. And Adam Armstrong is away. What are you thinking about top scorers? While you talk, I'll bung it up on the other screen, yeah?
Yeah, top scorers this season is a very interesting one. I think that someone who's potentially got off to a bit of a slow start is Ivan Toney, but I fancy him to be up there at the end of the season just because of the sheer amount of chances that Brentford are going to go on and create this season. He probably should have hit the back of the net a few more times than he already has. I know he's had the penalty so far, but as soon as it starts to click for Ivan Toney at Brentford, I think he's got to be in the top 5 of them this season. Adam Armstrong's been ridiculous. I think the pace in that Blackburn forward line at the moment to hit teams on the counter is really quite exciting. Will they be able to keep it up for a whole year? I don't know, but if he is playing as that number 9, I think there's a lot of possibilities that he'll be getting into good numbers. Joe I like, but it's a question of if he can stay fit or not. It's an interesting one. There's a lot of big strikers in the Championship this year. Pookie as well, I think, will be up there.
Tyrese Dolan's looked great for the right winger for Blackburn as well. You wonder as well about, if Karanka has a good season, how many someone like Scott Hogan could score with Lucas Jukovic next to him. So, and if we just wander down that league, you've mentioned Tony, QPR. Well, Lyndon Dykes, I think, is there to bring other players in. Godden will play all the time for Coventry, but they've got Tyler Walker there as well. Stoke, I like Tyrese Campbell as well, Ben. I think he might come outside in rather than be sort of central striker. And then Middlesbrough, you have Neil Warnock with Akpom and Fletcher and Assombalonga. And then anyone who works with James Beattie, I know it's Sheffield Wednesday, tends to score a load of goals. Gary Monk and James Beattie have got Michu and Chris Wood and Che Adams all banging in the goals. So there you go. There's the $1 million question. Do Rick Parry's job for him, Ben. What would you try and do to improve the sustainability of the Championship? So I would draw your attention to the massive amount some teams make and the less amount others do. But I suppose Alistair may be referring to salary caps or turnover-related salary caps or hard salary caps. What do you think?
It's a tough one. You'll probably know a little bit more than me on this sort of thing, being an Ipswich fan and the salary caps that have come in League One and things like that. I think that the Premier League and Championship are very much like League One, League Two are linked. I think there's quite the gap in between there. So I think that anything that does go ahead and happen in the Championship, there's going to need to be some implications for the Premier League, and obviously those three clubs coming down from it. If I had, all the answers to this, I'd probably be applying for a job at the EFL tomorrow. So it's an interesting one. What's your whole take on salary caps and things like that for the Championship?
Well, if I'm speaking as a biased Ipswich fan, so with a very conscious, confessed bias, a salary cap is rubbish for Ipswich in League One, because one of the only advantage Ipswich could possibly have is the fact that they can draw more commercial revenues and more gate receipts than Accrington, Rochdale, add any other team with not big attendances easily. So that takes an advantage away from a team. So if you support one of those teams, you say, no, we deserve to spend that money that we make by living in having a bigger town or what have you, or a bigger supporter base. Whereas if you support one of the smaller teams, use whatever word you're comfortable. Some people don't like me using the word smaller, but you tell me what word you want me to use if you don't like smaller. But if you support one of the smaller teams, you say, well, it's not fair that Ipswich can draw more money. They shouldn't be allowed to spend that. So you can totally see it from both ways. And then when you put that in the Championship and you have, so for example, Brentford lost the playoff final last year and had a really good season. Norwich lost their last 11 games, yet will receive £42 million more broadcast money through the parachute payments than Brentford. And I've always had an issue with that, but I did a show with Kieran Maguire and I researched it, Ben. I set everything up and I had all the parachute payments been divided equally. And he said, Ben, that won't work. And I said, why, Kieran? And he said, because the Premier League sort out parachute payments. Premier League teams would have to vote for that. And why would the three teams vote for less money? No one ever votes for less. Why would they vote to spread out all the money that they can have between the three of them across another 15 teams? And the EFL don't get a say in what the Premier League gives them. So, and then you're absolutely stuck. And then you start to think, well, if we do a salary cap in the Championship, we need to have something in the Premier League. Else, why would any good player stay in the Championship at all? You can go, they'd all just go and sign for Premier League clubs and be loaned back on, like Cameron Carter-Vickers or Luke Garbutt, who are playing for Luton and Ipswich on 30 grand a week because they're actually owned by Everton or Tottenham, who can afford it. Anyway, we're coming up an hour, Ben. We'll do one more question. Let's try and find a really, really good one. Then I will let you go, my friend. We haven't talked about Derby County. Do you think Derby County could go down if they don't get back to winning games? Obviously, by definition, they will go down if they don't win any games. But I don't know where you had Derby in your 1 to 24, Ben. I had them outside of the playoffs, I think, but having a good season and improving. But it's not started well, has it?
Yeah, I think I had Derby in and around the playoffs, but just falling short. It surprised me a little bit how slow off the mark they have been. So Preston played Derby in the EFL Cup. I think it was the second round. The intensity in that squad just wasn't there. I think it was the same with the game at the weekend as well. It was so easy to get in and out of them. I think that there's been, the million-dollar question at Derby really is someone like Wayne Rooney undroppable? He's probably not in the best form at the moment, but I think there's a very good crop of youngsters there at Derby. I think that what they're trying to do with the recruitment, they're definitely still in need of a number 9 into that squad. Jos Wyack, I think, was a good addition. Nathan Byrne coming in, I think, was a nice option as well to get in and replace Jayden Bogle. Overall, I'd probably say that David Marshall was an improvement on what they had there last year. Forest and Derby have both got off to very slow starts this season, but I do think the tide will turn at Derby. I am fairly confident in saying that things will come good for them eventually. I think they've got a good young core group of players there. They just need a little bit more in this transfer market.
Very good indeed. Right, Ben, I said I'd only keep you for an hour, so we will wrap up there. Thank you from me for coming on, Ben. You were very, very highly requested by everyone to come on. Can we get you back on another Wednesday night Ask Away stream during the season?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely stuff. Do you want to do one more plug for the channel and then I'll do my litany of selling stuff?
Yeah, so over on BenHD on YouTube for everything championship related, really. Score predictions and reviews and everything in between, BenHD.
Exactly the same over here. You can support via Super Chat, Patreon, Amazon Shopfront. Please like, subscribe. Go and like Ben's channel and support him as well. Without the world's smallest violin coming out, we're not dealing with Liverpool and Leeds and Manchester United. But, and Ben will admit this, we work just as hard as the people that do with a smaller potential audience reach for us. So please do come and support. It does make the difference between us being able to do it and not. We will likely see Ben back later in the season. It'd be brilliant to have you back on, Ben. I'll have a little chat with you just after the music. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for the questions. And I will see you all tomorrow. We're doing Brentford versus Fulham, Coventry, Bournemouth on Friday, and probably Norwich Derby on Saturday. So all go on the channel. Ben, hang around and we'll chat after the music. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Over and out.